Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to talk about the 2025 State of Rehab Report with Heidi Jannenga here from WebPT. We're going to talk about this report. It's awesome. You guys should definitely read it if you haven't already. This report surveys thousands of rehab therapists and practice owners about their top concerns and challenges. And it's really been an interesting shift in the 2025 report. So I'm really excited to talk with Heidi today, get her insights, and learn what's happening, having that pulse on the industry. So, Heidi, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Neil. It's so great to be back talking about this report. This this report, we changed a little bit of the formatting this year, and it sounds like from the feedback that we've been getting early on that it's really resonating with folks. So I'm really thrilled to be able to go through this with you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again for doing this. I think it's such a valuable, action in our industry just to really, you feel so much better when you and can obviously operate with good data and insight in your own practice when you see what's happening out there outside of your own little bubble, right? And you see what's happening across the industry, and you're like, okay, now okay, this is a commonality here. What can we do about it? But last year we talked about the 2024 report, and that was all about a lot of emphasis on burnout, reimbursement pressure, of course, staffing challenges. And this year's report does suggest something deeper is happening. And so, I'm curious from your perspective, what was that big shift that we've seen since that 2024 report, now in the 2025 report?
Well, and I just have to preface that, these are all retrospective. This is, looking at back at 2025 and sort of accumulating the responses that we've gotten throughout the year through our survey. And like you said, I mean, the 2024 was all about burnout. We're still sort of dealing with a lot of the issues that we talked about in 2024. It's almost like a perfect storm now with the provider shortages and rising student debt. That still is an issue, although, there's some things that are improving in that area. Inflation is significantly higher, so operational costs continue to rise, as well as the opposition to that, which is the declining reimbursements and the difficulty with even utilization of care. And so I think the most significant shift that happened in 2025 in response to some of those things was the introduction of even more technology and, of course, AI. I mean, we're no different than many other industries, but it's really taken center stage this in 2025 with the introduction of some, tools to manage some of the volatility that we were seeing while trying to maintain some of those human connections that really define our industry. And so I know we'll talk a little bit about that more throughout our findings, but that was pretty much the biggest shift is the advancement of technology in lots of different areas, trying to diminish some of the administrative burden that is plaguing our industry.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, it's so true. Like if we look back at 2025, that was the year where like AI really started to get some traction and really just kind of explode in all industries. We definitely have seen that. And it's been really cool to see how, WebPT and others are really helping clinics from the AI perspective. Like how do we build more efficiency into our clinics and obviously decrease that administrative burden on the clinic so that we can do what we do best, right? Which is help people get better. Um, so in the 2025 report, you have what you call a misalignment, and then so I'm curious, what does that mean, and why is that such a critical issue right now?
Well, what we found, because we categorize our responses based on the titles and or uh, job roles that people have within their practices. And what we really noticed was this malalignment, meaning like this gap between what clinic leaders believe truly motivates their team and then what the actual clinicians said that they were looking for in terms of employee benefits and the things that actually motivate them. And so um, while clinic owners, often understand the stressors that their employees are facing, I think they're underestimating how much employees value the actual work itself and the reason behind them becoming physical therapists, and even their desire for more responsibility. They're wanting to take on, more things in the practice other than just specifically patient care. Whether that's advancing their education, or other opportunities that they feel like they can allow their ability to improve patient care.
Yeah, fantastic point. I mean, we've all seen this kind of shift this direction, but I think your report really brought it to light in that as owners, we're looking at a lot of different factors, and especially like the financial health of the practice, right? And trying to keep that going. And so we have these demands that we need to have productivity, but at the same time, we're in a buyer's market. You there's, I think, about 12,000 shortfall right now of therapists in the market, and the APTA projections show that over the next decade, that's gonna like barely change. So that's here to stay unless there's a dramatic change in the way that we can pump out more therapists into the market. There's this opportunity for therapists to go other places if they're not happy or content with where they are. And I think that comes back to like having a mindset as an owner of what am I doing to facilitate the advancement of my staff, right? And I think that they're looking for that too. And I think you brought it out in that report too, that sometimes as owners, we think that salary is the most important thing, but it's not necessarily the most important thing. And can you speak to that and what you've seen in clinics too?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hammer and a nail situation, right? You think that you're seeing a nail in terms of, the salary usually is what is a big motivator. And while it still is, because, many students, or not students, but newer grads especially, are coming out with significant, debt, student debt from being having just gone through expensive PT school and incurring debt in that regard. So they are looking for ways to offset that, but there can be more creative ways in offsetting that debt than just increasing salary. And then the other piece of it is to truly acknowledge non-financial motivators. Uh, I think salary is obviously one way, just throw money at people, but I think providers are really concerned more about their working environment, the bureaucracy, like their mentorship is a big thing that came out. They really, want to have that mentorship within a practice, or have the opportunity to work side by side, have that communication, open communication with their leadership, and sort of that transparency that comes with that communication. They want to be able to have FaceTime to ask the tough questions. They want to understand what's going on in the industry, the advocacy that's required. They want to be a part of that, and just want to feel heard, right? This is this generation of that open transparency conversations. They want to feel heard. They want to have an opportunity to voice their opinions. And it's not necessarily that their opinions have to be implemented. They do have great ideas, by the way. So having, an open opportunity to listen. But really it's about the overall working conditions. And I think, um, you know, those are things that don't cost money, but they do require time. And I think just making sure that we're carving out that kind of individual conversations, mentorship opportunities can go a long way. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is really empowering the staff. One of the things that we saw was this perception of responsibility, that perhaps they're not ready, or they don't want to take on more responsibility. But in fact, at least from our survey, especially some of the front office folks who are staffers and front office staff and billers, are really motivated to take on responsibility. They want to take on some of the issues that are going on, and have good ideas, again, to try to offset, some of the stress they see the clinicians and the providers are having to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so critical, right? We're just we're in a a different time. We're in a different generation. And we, like you said, the people want to contribute. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can look for too in hiring staff is if someone is just money motivated, that's not usually the right fit for your clinic, right? It's certainly an important discussion, but you want someone that is duty oriented. Like they really want to help people. They really want to, be part of a growing team, and they really want everybody to do better. Like that's the ideal people that you want to bring into your clinic. And, you know, I, I think you and I, Heidi, are from that generation where we started as PTs, and it was like 16 to 20, visits a day norm, right? That's very difficult to pull off these days because of the demands of paperwork and on all these other administrative burdens. And it's a fast way to burn out. I mean, it was a fast way to burn out back in the day, but that's kind of like how things operated in different clinics. And so
Yeah.
you didn't really change much. But there are clinics now that it might be 10 visits a day, right? It might be 12 visits a day. And that's a regular kind of norm, what people are expecting. So we have to be accommodating to that. There's this balance, right? There's this balance between productivity and then not killing your staff with just shoving patients down on them, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's important to understand each individual, right? I think that's what the report is really showing too, is that everybody's motivated differently, and there are definitely, at least from those that answered our survey, a lot more non-financial motivators that aren't being looked at. But to your point, I mean, if you have hired someone who is very money motivated, then figure out and tailor their incentives to allow you to meet your business goals alongside of what they're trying to accomplish as well. Like, I think sometimes we think everybody has to be treated exactly the same, and while the full financial package should probably be, have a baseline of number, right?
Mhm.
um and so, but how you implement that for each individual could be slightly different based on what their motivating factors are. So that sort of equity and equality is really important across the board, but how you actually achieve that can be different for each individual person.
Mhm.
But I do think that communication piece is critical. Like, it's we get so busy and caught up sometimes in the work that we have to remember, like, that face-to-face interaction that we love so much with our patients is what therapists love in general, right? So the leadership component to that is got to include that as well.
Yeah. And I think like you said, recognizing that everybody is different in the way that their motivators are. That's one of the challenges as a leader, is being able to look at that and then um, get that feedback in a way that empowers that person. So if you have, for example, someone who really is super clinical, right? Like loves that kind of stuff. Do they have an hour a week or something carved out where they're working on a clinical research project that's going to help the team, right? Or if you have someone that's really like management focused or loves that, can they have something that you can give them that they feel empowered to do that? And if someone is a super bubbly, energetic, maybe they're really good with social media for you, right? Could you give them an hour to kind of empower and help you there? So there's lots of different actions within the clinic, but I think it's, like you said, tailoring something, looking and having that feedback, having those conversations, having those one-on-ones with your team, and spotting what other interests or things that they're excited about that they can contribute to the practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it a little bit earlier too. Although we keep referring to this as a PT shortage problem, while that's true in some regard, it really is about a retention problem, right? We are graduating quite a few therapists, but the problem is we're losing a high percentage of them to other industries, or going into digital care, things like that, where
Yeah.
they're not actually working in practices doing hands-on PT anymore. And so um, if we don't sort of change the dynamic and culture of, and also I'll just say too, like, this is a little bit part of of the educational institutions as well, is setting them up for success and the reality of what it is like to in these days, right? Of what it's going to take to really work in an outpatient private practice arena, the expectations, what you should be looking for, those kinds of things are really important. And what we're finding from our survey, but also in what I hear from students through Rising Tide is that that's not really happening. There's a disconnect between what the expectations might be of what they're being set up for from academic institutions to the reality of what it's like inside a practice. And so while we're doing our best in terms of, sending students out with their clinical rotations, a lot of times they don't really get to dive into sort of the full scope and picture of what it is. Obviously, you're very focused on the clinical aspects, which is important. But once they get out and actually get a job, there's a bit of disconnect there too.
I totally agree with that. And I've heard that many times from different practice owners that new grads coming out, they have very different expectations from what they've learned in school to what
Right.
their, the market is like, right? And working within
Yeah.
the clinic. You don't really get that until you start to get into your internships, right? And start to see that. But I totally agree. Like that's something where can for our audience out there, where can you, if you do have internships with different schools and affiliations with different schools, is that something that you could go and have a lesson on with? And a
Right.
lot of times the institutions are looking for guest speakers and that come in, and just that little bit can also set you apart in terms of when people are coming out of school. They saw you in their class, right? You talk business with them, they're going to gravitate to you too. So another way of giving back, but also could be potentially a recruitment tool for you too.
Totally.
So Heidi, in the report, I know that I saw a lot about the breakdown by practice size and the small to medium sized growing practices and then large enterprise type practices. So just kind of looking through that, with the small and medium sized practices, so like one provider, 2 to 5 providers, or even 6 to 16 providers, there was a large proportion of the report that was surveyed from these clinics. I'm curious, as you've seen these small and medium sized clinics, what have you seen as their biggest challenges from that report?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on the small and medium sized practices because it was our highest respondent rate as well. So we felt like we had a lot of insights into this segment of the market. And traditionally, this has been an area that WebPT has highly focused on in the past as well, in serving this market. And so what we've seen is, I mean, the perfect storm that we just talked about, right? And they don't really have the leverage per se that, larger organizations do when it comes to negotiating insurance rates and, tend to sometimes, have poor contracts that they've already signed up for. So they were some of the challenges that they're seeing are just the lack of resources to invest in technology, more marketing, and sort of this struggle to balance their patient care with just the demand and the requirement to increase volume to
Mhm.
stay afloat, right? With reimbursements continuing to go down, expenses going up, the logical thing to do is you got to see more patients. And so some of the things that we noted was the reimbursement strategy. So this is the highest, the biggest area segment in the market that is going out of network. And part of that is to try to increase their pay per visit, right? You can get paid higher rates at and out of network on out of network contracts, and so um, when you can't leverage on getting a better contract in network, you go out of network, and that's
Yeah.
just tough because that's tough on patients too. So you got to really find your niche group of patients that are willing to and can, pay for those types of services out of network because their
Mhm.
deductibles tend to be higher as well. So anyway, it's an interesting strategy, but it's by far the most aggressive segment of the market that's going out of network that we noticed.
That's fascinating. And it makes a lot of sense too. I mean, you got to know your worth, basically. You got to know your operating costs and what it actually takes you to deliver that service to someone. And then, of course, you have to be profitable on top of that. And I don't think this is just unique to our industry. I think this is across healthcare, where there's many providers that are going out of network or changing how they operate with different insurance companies or continue to renegotiate their contracts. And I think it's an area that I see clinicians having to, have some tough conversations and tough decisions around.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
But I think, again, for our profession, we've been very undervalued for such a long time. It's kind of like that breaking point. And I think the data here in the reports shows that there is a breaking point where it just doesn't make sense to take that particular insurance contract anymore, because while you want to help the patient, you're losing money, right? And you can't operate if you're just losing money all the time.
Yeah, and this is the segment of the market that is also dominated by the most entrepreneurial leaders too, right? I mean, these are still founders, leading these small and medium-sized businesses, and so they're looking for strategies to streamline their business, and so they do have a somewhat tempered but very open attitude when it comes to AI and technology, and so they are definitely interested in looking at AI, and this is an opportunity for them to hopefully find ways to, again, minimize the administrative burden by speeding up some of their documentation, helping to streamline some of their front office and billing tasks. For us, we've seen a huge uptick in, the digital intake and the digital benefits verification, and those types of things that can be done automated automatically. And so investing a little bit more in technology to gain some of the benefits. I think they're always sometimes slower to adopt in certain areas. And obviously, trying to balance the cost analysis of, well, if I do this, like, am I just not going to, could I, let one person go, or do I not have to hire that next staff member by implementing some technology? And so we're definitely seeing some areas that they're more open to investing in technology, which I think is, important for them to continue to compete with the larger organizations, which you saw in the report, are adopting this in droves.
Yeah, and it's a great point that you're bringing up. Is it something not only you're seeing from the data in the report, but like in conversations with different practice owners? I'm talking like 20, 30 years ago, it used to be almost a 1-for-1 ratio, like one therapist to one admin, and then that slowly evolved to close to a 2 therapist to one admin ratio. What do you see from that? Where do you see the future going when it comes to like that admin to therapist ratio?
Yeah, that's definitely the ratio is getting higher and higher in terms of admin to clinician, and honestly, it's probably closer to 1 to 3 now, and for sure in the future it could probably 1 to 5 in the very near future. With the adoption of the right technology in a platform that can, from start to finish, ease from, helping some of the marketing, leveraging the documentation, even automatic scheduling, things like that. And then, of course, on the billing side, leveraging some of the machine learning and things that we can do on the reimbursement side with working with insurance companies and making sure you're getting paid on the payment side as well.
Yeah, because I think if we look at those costs, right, in a practice, the cost to actually do the administrative work, right, the scheduling, the insurance verification, the billing components, the accounting and finance, the more that we implement AI into the practice, and I've seen this with practices that are really pushing the kind of the envelope there, and I'm sure you see a lot of this too. But if you used to operate, like, let's say you have like five therapists in your clinic, and you used to have three, sometimes four admin people. You used to have couple front desk, a biller, you don't need all of those positions anymore. You may go down to, say, like one scheduler or something like that. So obviously we know that in our practice, labor costs are the highest cost. And
That's
so
right.
wherever we can reduce the amount of admin people, I think AI and technology, the clinics that really keep working hard to implement that and those different workflows are going to win.
Yeah, I mean, and the cost is only going up, minimum wage increasing across pretty much every state. So I would say that, the number one recommendation that we have for these smaller practices is looking into and leveraging technology and AI to increase sort of their reach and efficiency, but without losing that personal touch. It's really important that we don't lose that personal touch, especially at their level, when it comes to driving that high patient satisfaction, high patient retention, in that they don't lose sort of that secret sauce that they've had with their community and their area in which they're serving,
Yeah.
with
I
those
think that can be
patients.
done. That can be done too. I mean,
100%.
a lot of the if we think of the patient experience, right? So who's involved in those touch points with the patient as they come through our clinic and interact with our team. I still think, while automated scheduling is really critical, we kind of expect that, like when we go to restaurants or different places, being able to do things, pretty quick online. I think you still are going to need that one person at the front desk who is a coordinator, right? That can really make people come in for their care, right? That's one of the critical things there. But some of those other actions, like all the insurance verification, billing, at one point, can that be, the kind of the back end support, right, more automated? Then we can enrich that patient experience even more, right, with the human to human contact, but the supporting back end AI and different technologies to help that happen.
Well, as we look through 2026 and even beyond, Neil, I think that, as we, try to look into our crystal ball, um, the complexity of the patients that we're going to see in our practices is going to increase, where, um, we probably a whole different podcast we can talk about, but, some of those more streamlined MSK patients are more and more being pushed to some of the digital home exercise program and, digital platforms that are out there,
Mhm.
especially as we look at sort of the workman's comp area. And so the ones that are going to continue to show up are the complex patients that can't be sort of streamlined through some sort of protocol where these steps need to be happen. Here's the exercises you need to do. And so as we think about the future, like that, we have to understand our differentiator as physical therapists and double down on what that is, meaning our hands-on abilities, our knowledge, our experience, our expertise, because these are the patients that we're going to need to are going to continue to be the ones that show up in our four wall
Mhm.
practices, um, are the ones that are more complex. And so uh, as we that hands-on capability, our knowledge of exercise progression, but also just in our clinical skills, it's going to be really important that we continue to leverage that and broadcast that, market that,
Mhm.
so that we stay relevant, honestly, as this digital force continues to push forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally 100% agree on that. Um, kind of bringing what we talked about here with the report, and you were talking about the out of network increase that's happening. I'm curious if you've seen this too in the report, if there was any information on this, but one thing that we've definitely seen at practice promotions is a lot of our clients are bringing in different service lines into their practice that are more cash based, and I do see that as the future of our practice, where we have this hybrid of insurance and cash service lines. So I'm curious if there was any data or information that you saw, or just in your experiences working with different clinicians, if that's something that you're seeing a lot of in the market too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think especially in the growing practice segment of 17 to 49 providers, as we categorized it, these alternative services like that are not currently being covered by insurance per se, of dry needling or other sort of modalities and treatment options, medically oriented gyms, things like that, and even to remote therapeutic monitoring, even though that is becoming more mainstream now and being covered. But some of those opportunities, I think, beyond the sort of traditional physician referral and cash-based services, you're absolutely right. It is as part of the revenue side of a budget for private practice today. Cash-based services have significantly increased from the days that you and I were around, where it was a much smaller percentage of our overall revenue. It's significantly growing now, to the point of, depending on the practice. I mean, we know that there are full cash-based practices now, and even if you think about an out-of-network practice, I mean, you're collecting a lot from the patient. I mean, we've talked about this in other podcasts, or I've talked about this in other podcasts, where every practice today is a cash-based practice in some regard, because
Right.
deductibles being so high, especially this time of year in the first, quarter to 2 quarters. I mean, if you're not collecting that cash over the counter, you're going to be in a world of hurt, right? You're talking thousands of dollars in deductibles now in those first visits, and if they haven't specifically had any kind of surgery or other item prior to coming in. And I don't know. I see this today. My daughter tore her ACL 5 months ago, and we're going through PT with her after surgery. And what did everybody do? They had all of their surgeries done by the end of the year so that they could actually have their surgery covered by their
Right.
annual deductible. But now, starting January 1, PT, because they'll continue on PT, has to go with the deductible renewing, right? And so
Yeah.
that collection over the counter and knowing what to collect immediately, right? Having that, muscle to make sure that you're doing that with every single patient, and automating that, benefit renewal through an automated service with the insurance or through your EMR, should absolutely be happening, right? So you know exactly what the patient should be paying on every visit, and having that conversation with the patient to remind them and let them know. And that's only going to get tougher and tougher as deductibles continue to grow. The cost burden onto the patient is going to continue to grow with their copays getting higher. We hear on the news every day about the cost of healthcare these days, and so that's going to be impacting us. But how we make sure we automate and make sure the business side of our practice is in alignment with the things that are happening in the healthcare world is critically important for us to stay
Totally.
successful in our businesses.
Absolutely. In any business, one of the most sensitive PR actions is under finance. So you're absolutely right in that you have to have the technology in place so that you have the accurate information of what's due. Is this something that the patient's going to be responsible for? The patient often doesn't know, right? Like I wouldn't know as a patient, like how much of my deductible I may have met or not met because of all the complexities of different, especially if I had a surgery like your daughter has, right? There's a lot of bills from all kinds of doctors and anesthesiologists and people coming in, right? So, and you don't know when of those have been filed, what's been applied to the insurance. So you have to realize that your patients coming in, they really don't have a good understanding of do they owe something or do they not owe something? They might think they may not owe anything because they had a surgery, but nothing was billed just yet, right? So
Right.
having that technology in place is so critical so that you can handle the financial conversation as needed, right? So maybe like, hey, great, you already met your deductible. Let's get you in. Let's get things worked out. Or, you know what, you haven't met your deductible. It's going to be this amount. And if you have that conversation with them, if you collect that payment at the time it is due, it is so much better in terms of the patient experience than if you're calling them 2-3 weeks later. Hey, by the way, you still owe me for that. It's like 5 times harder to get the money collected.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that's where, of course, like you're saying, AI and technology can really help us make sure we're prepared for the financial conversations we need to have with our patients.
Well, and in this segment of 17 to 49 providers in this sort of growing practice segment, as we call it, they are definitely more. They're leaning into this adoption of AI for whether it's billing or compliance or documentation. There's definitely a lot more enthusiasm in this area. Obviously, they have a little more discretionary opportunities and to be able to buy into some of these products, but I think the number one recommendation for this size was really based on the feedback is educating on AI and technology. It's not just about, ooh, this is the shiniest object that's giving you, the best sales pitch, but it's really making sure you're educating yourself on how to leverage and what are the areas that you should be leveraging or could you get the best bang for your buck to reduce the administrative burden that's plaguing your practice.
So at
But
this
also
level,
to educate the staff and the clinicians of how you're going to be utilizing it, how it should be best utilized to get back to what you're saying is to still continue to provide the best patient experience.
yeah. That was my question for you was, at that level, the complexities increase, and then you've got so many people that you got to keep them aligned, right? And so, that was my question was at this stage, it might be like, oh yeah, this is a great AI feature, right? Or software we might implement, but then it's the execution of that across the team, right? And
That's
so is that
right.
something now that you're seeing these businesses at the scale really working to work on the implementation side of these technologies?
Yeah, well, 2025 was the year of everybody wanting to do something with AI. Like AI was the buzzword, and oh my gosh, you have to AI, AI, AI. Well, again, just like every other industry, you're seeing now the maturity of some of the AI products and what the opportunities can be. And so now those that sort of waited, are getting the benefit now of the more mature opportunities and more mature platforms that can actually utilize it across multiple areas with the same tool, right? So whether it's or within the same EMR or EMR platform, right? So like things that you're able to do on the front end and front office can trickle down into then some of the things that the clinicians are doing, and then other tools that are being utilized in billing. So it's trying to span across the entire continuum of care. That can best be utilized, and that's what I think you're seeing now is the maturity of platforms like WebPT who are instituting AI across the board in relevant ways that really make impact and not just sort of some flashy things that seem cool but may not be really adding true value to the business and practice.
Yeah, that was one of my questions too. Obviously, it's such a fast-paced, changing world. We're all trying to figure out as, open AI is like coming out with something new or a new version or some other large language model comes available. So that was a great point that you put in. So at WebPT, have you seen that evolution over the last year of maturing the products and really fine tuning things in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have been slower to push out some AI opportunities, but what we're seeing is that the benefit of that is now that we're coming out with real or tools that are actually really making impact, and larger impact than just small niche areas, but again across the continuum, which I think in the long run is really what practices are going to need to be able to utilize is truly seeing that benefit across all of their employees within a practice.
Yeah, I love that. And so, Heidi, just kind of wrapping up here with the State of the Rehab report here from 2025, and your experience here in the industry, looking at the AI, the better retention, the smarter tech. What do you think that practice is going to look like in 5 years' time?
Well, it's definitely going to look a lot more automated. I think there's going to, what I hope it's going to embrace is more of this human-oriented computing, where you are going to be seeing more technology implementation, some hands-free, allowing therapists to have documentation happening while they're having this communication with the patient. So the ambient documentation, I think, is going to be highly utilized. I think you're going to have more clinician decision support to where things are going to be suggested in ways that can be, the critical thinking of a therapist is required, but you're going to have a lot of things that can be automatic based on your way of treating, that it's going to learn who you are, kind of this co-pilot. I like to call it a PT co-pilot, where the AI and the technology is going to be able to assist you in allowing you to do things quicker throughout, but while you're still really focused on the patient connection, and allow this to be working in the background, especially on the reimbursement and billing side. Now, I'll just say that we, in general, not we as in WebPT, but just in general in healthcare, as on the provider side, are probably a little bit more behind than the insurance companies. And so we have to combat their abilities of what they are doing today, in the vast amount of data that they have, to minimize and pay and save themselves money, right? Whether it's on the authorization side, which you're going to hear about much more in 2026, in minimizing the amount of patients that qualify, quote unquote qualify, or can be authorized for a certain number of PT visits. So maximizing each visit that we have with patients is going to be really important. But yeah, I think that the 5-year vision is, it's going to be tough before it gets better, but we really have to streamline how we think about care. And again, go back to emphasizing what is our secret sauce? Like, what do we do better than anyone else? And that really is around that patient connection, and being able to treat those complex the patients with multiple diagnoses that are the ones that are going to continue to be showing up in our practices moving forward.
Love it. Fantastic insights. Thank you so much, Heidi, for that. I would say too, for our audience out there, and in that segment that you saw, such a the biggest segment, right, which was from that 1 to 16 provider type clinic. I think it's so important at that level, right? When you're a practice owner, you're wearing all of the hats, you're trying to do all of the things, you're trying to treat patients usually at the same time and do everything. There's so much new things happening, AI technologies, industry changes. If you don't allocate the time to work on your business, and block out like half a day once a week, if you can't do anything else, right? Because the clinics that really work towards this implementation of these back-end technologies, of keeping up with the industry, how they can enhance that patient experience. Maybe they are going to bring in additional, cash service lines, whatever those programs are needed within your practice for you to be successful. You can't do it if you're doing everything. You need that time to work on the business too. So that would just be my 2 cents for our audience out there.
Well, Neil, it's so funny because I feel like we say this every year, is you got to be working on your business and not only in your business, right? It's at this size, but man, if we probably say this every year too, but with the speed at which things are changing with the implementation of technology in 2025, and it's only going to continue to accelerate in 2026, you have got to do what you just said. Like, it's coming fast, and furious, and it's only getting harder to get paid, because insurances are also implementing this type of technology to combat what we're trying to do, right? And so it's not necessarily about documenting more. It's really about how do you document the right things and making sure those things are put into your notes. And so anyway, I would just, it's a reflection on us doing this now for many years. I feel like we end the segments with a similar sort of message, but man, if we can put a triple exclamation point on it this year, I think it's really important.
That's why I love it. I love it. And you're so right in that this is such a fast-paced evolution. And this is the way that society changes, right? It's never like a linear thing. It's always like these bursts of rapid change and evolution, and then we kind of calm down for a little bit, and then it's like this next rapid pace. And you and I in practice were there during the change of the internet, right?
That's right.
I remember our professor in PT school actually was the first one to get us an email address, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's my dinosaur years, right? But if we look at the impact the internet had on the practice, and again, those clinics that were fast evolving to that newer technology at the time, websites, email, EMRs, versus the old paper charts and billing with a HCFA form. The companies that really worked hard to implement that change were the ones that moved ahead, right, and had the ability to command market share. So same thing today. The clinics that are really working hard to implement these newer technologies and AI and how they can make things move fast and efficiently are the ones that are going to be successful. So on it. You have to work on it.
And patients are more savvy too. They're looking for that kind of, they see it in their regular life, and they look for it in even in healthcare now too, with many doctors, starting to implement some of these things as well. So yeah, it's like it's coming very fast. But if anybody's interested in downloading the full State of Rehab Therapy report, it can be downloaded directly from the WebPT website. Or you just Google WebPT State of Rehab Therapy 2025, it'll pop up, and it's a free download. But we're really happy with how it came out, and lots of really incredible insights. Again, thank you as always, Neil, for allowing us to come on and share a little bit about the insights and things that can help private practice in today's world.
I love it, Heidi, and thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, for working to organize that. I think it's such a valuable resource for practice owners out there. Make sure you download that from the WebPT site. It is really powerful. It's a great insight, and again, how you can leverage that information about what is happening in the industry to move your practice forward. So go ahead and check that out. Heidi, again, thank you so much for all your insights here today. Love it. Love your expertise and what you're doing for the industry. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. And for our audience out there, thank you so much for listening to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the Practice Marketing Podcast and check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to that too. And don't forget practicepromotions.net, where you can download tons of marketing advice for your clinic. So this is Neil Trickett from Practice Promotions and the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.